What is good, YouTube? This is Neo with Simplicity, Complexity, Simplified. Today's topic, we're going to get in, do modern women really care about their children? And what we're going to do today, I want you to take your emotions, basically your feelings out of this, and look at this from a statistics, data, reasoning, and logical point of view. Because a lot of the things I'm going to go over are going to be polarizing, but look at it for what it is. Not what it could, should, or what it should be, what is. And let's start off with talking about the children. The children, when you have a child and you allow them to be with only one parent, aka single motherhood, you have now put that child into a deficit, aka you've just put that child into debt. And I'm not talking about money debt, but their future is in debt. And you understand what I'm talking about when we get into this. So let's start off with the Cinderella effect when it comes to children. And when I talk about the Cinderella effect, I'm going to make this easier to explain based off of a lion's pride. And what a lion's pride, when I'm talking about this, is the king, the lion, and the lionesses around him. Let's say he has 4 lionesses. If there's another lion that shows up, they fight to say who's the king. If the new lion beats the old lion, he now takes over and takes control and the 4 lionesses are now his. They belong to him. He now kills off the cubs of the old Lion King and now makes his own legacy. The reason he does that is based off of a biological and evolutionary type condition, if you will. Because basically, the old lion's cubs aren't his DNA, so he gets rid of them. And not to mention, not only are they not his DNA, he has to invest in those children plus his own. So that actually takes away, because the amount that is invested, if he has to invest in both sides, it's a big chunk more than if he has to invest in only his. This is from, the lion's pride. Now, we're going to put this back onto the human side, which it makes sense from like I said, a biological evolutionary standpoint. I'm not saying it's right or anything. I'm just telling you based on biology. This is why I started off saying take your feelings out of it. So, because the step parent has to invest in these kids, whether it be money, clothing, food, it takes away from the investment of the biological child. It makes sense, like I said, it makes sense from a evolutionary and biological standpoint. But because we're more of a civilized people, now we can put in back our morals. These children are being abused and or murdered. And just to let you know what the rate is, a step parent that comes in is a 40 to up to 100 times more likely to abuse and or murder that child. Now, like I said, this is not me saying that it's okay to happen. I never said that. What I'm stating is the likelihood of this happening based off a biological urge. This is why the biological father, is so important in the child's life, because it's his own flesh and blood. Not to mention that if you don't have the biological father, it is a big issue towards the society in general, which we're about to get into. So you already start off with a deficit if the child was just fatherless. But if you do decide to bring in somebody else, if you choose wrong for the second time, you've now put your child in another deficit, a real big deficit, because he's more likely to be abused. Excuse me. And I'm not saying like based off, I shouldn't marry the man. No, this is including into the AKA the live-in boyfriend. So I need you to understand that you need to choose right the first time. This is why it's so important. If you're going to have sex and have a child in general, because you have to be selfish to have a child. This is one of the most selfish things you can do because the child did not even ask to be here in the first place. So you, as the mother, chose for the child to be there. You had every right, because there's over 30 forms of contraception for you to, and if you didn't want contraception, you have the right to an abortion. So you made a selfish decision to have a child, and then decided that you didn't need the biological father in that child's life, which is now going to put them and put it in a deficit, which we're like, so we're going to go over that. But if you put in the step parent, there's a likely going to be another deficit if the parent is not, if the step parent is not a good step parent, because you already chose wrong the first time, and you're likely to choose wrong the second time. So now you've put your child in the deficit because of your poor decisions. So let's go into the second part of this. Why it's important to have the biological father in that child's life. So if we look here, when you don't have the biological father in that child's life, the absence of the father is the single most important cause of poverty. The same is true for crime. So let's look up another statistic to back this up. So when you look at this right here, children in father-absent homes are almost 4 times more likely to be poor. 12% of children in in 2011, 12% of children in married couple families were living in poverty, compared to 44% of children in mother-only families. So when you look at this chart right here, you'll see and notice that with married couples, the percentage is very low. But with the single mother household, the poverty rate is well up to almost 50%. And mind you, this is actually an older statistic. I'd actually hate to see the newer one. So this is already showing what we saw the first time. But let's go back to the other one again. So we got the most important cause of poverty, and the same is true for crime. Children of single-parent households are more likely to be abused, have emotional problems, engage in questionable behavior, struggle academically, and become delinquents. So let's start off with the first one, which I talked about. Single parents are more likely to be abused. Which I didn't talk about is currently in today's day and age, the number one abuser of children are women. But no one seems to want to talk about that in general. But if the number one abuser of children is women, just like how I started, do you really care about your child? Because a lot of you are abusing your child. But let's keep it going. You have emotional problems, engage in questionable behavior, struggle academically, and become a delinquent. Now, why do they become delinquent? Because the absence of a father, their biological father, because the father is based off of authority and discipline. This is what a father brings into the household. So if you don't have the father within the household, you're lacking authority and discipline. And to prove this point again from a crime standpoint, let's look at this real quick. States with lower percentage of single-parent families, on average, will have lower rates of juvenile crime. State-by-state analysis indicates that, in general, a 10% increase in the number of children living in single-parent homes, including divorces, accompanies a 17% increase in juvenile crime. So a father's home has a higher increase of crime to the general populace. So, like I said, you've now put your child into a heavy deficit because you decided to be a single parent. Now, I'm not going to take this away from the widows. I understand that widows are totally different concept versus the ones that had a husband or had a just a biological father in the child's life. Well, you had sex, and then things didn't work out and y'all separated. If you have a good relationship, that's cool. If this doesn't apply to you, let it go. But for those that it does apply, I need you to understand you've put your child into debt. And emotional and psychological level. And not to mention, it's going to have a detriment in society at a physical level. Because you now have a delinquent that is out, and what is it? Out of the seven worst school shootings, six of them were from single mother households. Six of the children were from single mother households. So I need you to look at this and understand that you're putting your child, you're putting not only your child but others at risk when you have a child that doesn't have a male figure in his life, somebody that can show the authority and discipline in their life. Not to mention, let's go into another area where there's been a deficit when it comes to age. Which a lot of women will try to wait. Oh, I got my career ahead of me. All right, now that I've got my career, I'm going to do, I want a child. Now I'm in my 30s or 40s looking to have a child or family. For those of you that do that, you have another issue when it comes to autism, because the older your age is as a woman, the more likelihood that you might have a child with autism. But there's another piece of that, but I'm not going to get into that yet. We're going to go into the autism lane first. So let's look this up real quick. When we go into, let's bring this up for y'all. Autism right here. 31% of children with autism have an intellectual disability, which, aka you have an IQ of below 70 and a 25% basically below average, which is 71 to 85. And that puts your child into the category of a moron, imbecile, or idiot, or basically just mentally retarded. I'm not insulting your child. That is the basic classification for that IQ. Don't take my word for it. I'm showing it to you here. You have now put your child into these categories of what their mentality wise. So you can see right here, because of they have autism, because you decided to wait, and we can get into geriatric pregnancy in a little bit. But remember, that's also part of because you waited too late. So you have now put your child at risk for autism for almost over. Yeah, I don't want to say almost. There's over a 50% chance of them having a below average IQ for autism, because you decided you wanted to do your career, you wanted to do this, you wanted to do that. Everything, it's all about me. But you don't care about the child you made one of the most selfish decisions in the world that you could have possibly made. That's bringing in a child into this world, because the child never asked to come into this world in the first place. You made that choice for that child. And since you made that choice for that child, you need to act upon it, the responsibility and the authority to act upon what you chose to do. But you're not doing this. That's what you're not doing. And since you're not doing that, you've now put your child into another deficit. So let's continue this, because not only if they have autism, a child that has autism is over 6 times more likely to have a gender dysphoria, aka the things with the trans and thinking, oh, okay, I'm not a girl, I'm a boy. I'm not a boy, I'm a girl. Over 6 times more likely that anybody, an autism child, will have the thought process of gender dysphoria. All right, will think he or she is supposed to be a different gender. 6 times more. So I need you to sit down and stop doing things based off you wanting to be happy, and look at the repercussions of your own actions that you've now put into that child. So I'm going to bring you into another point, which I guess women are starting to do this as well. Let me bring this up towards you as well. Share screen, give you. Here we have I won't even say young lady. This is a woman, and she's 42 years old. She has decided to have an IVF. And what an IVF is a in vitro fertilization. It's basically where they take the egg and the sperm outside, do it, put it together basically like in a petri dish, and then put it back into her womb. Is basically that type of concept, or an incubator, if I remember correctly, if that's possible. But once this happens, you have, like I said, you're putting your child into a deficit, because when you do this, you now strip that child of the basic necessities of a father, because the father is very important, which I've already explained to you not even 5 to 10 minutes ago. And not only that, let's put another thing to rest right here, because we always talk about, women always want to talk about, oh, my prime is in my 30s. When a man looks at you, this is based off a man looking at you, the overwhelming consensus, this has been proven to be fact, overwhelming majority of a man from the ages of 18 to 60 find a woman most attractive from the ages of 18 to 24. No more than 24. And you know what I find funny is the statistics, and it makes sense if you look at it from a statistic point of view. Look at what I've brought up here. If you look at the odds of a natural pregnancy for a woman, your highest chance are from those ages. The range of 20 up to 24, your highest range of being able to get pregnancy. So from a biological standpoint, it makes complete sense. And as you age, the chances of that going down. And it makes sense why men, I guess, in a natural instinct way, men understand, hey, this is our most fertile years. I want to get with this woman. And your odds of infertility go up as well. You go from almost a little more than 5%. As you get older, it increases drastically. And the lady back here, the lady I showed you a little while ago, like I said, she was 42 and decided, I want to get pregnant. I had my career. I always wanted to be a mom, but I had my career. I was the best at this, best at that. She was the best at a lot of these things. Basically, the typical modern woman today. She is the epitome of the typical modern woman. She had all these things going for her, but decided to wait until the very end and say, okay, now I want a kid. But she did it in this way, where she doesn't have a father in this child's life. So when you come into all these conclusions and all the statistics and data, you'll come to see and realize there's a pattern involved of where women have been told, okay, you can do it, you can have your cake and eat it too. But when you have your cake and eat it too, it may work out for you, but it does not work out for the child. You feel like, oh yeah, hey, I can do this, I can do that. And let's be realistic. The stats show otherwise of what the probability of that happening to where it works out for you is a lie. It's more than likely not going to happen the way you think it is. You're not going to be extremely happy the way you think you're going to be happy. And matter of fact, other women lie to you about it, but you go along with it. And to prove that point, let's look up something right here. Hey, just the takeaway. What is geriatric pregnancy and why it may be a higher risk? A geriatric pregnancy is an outdated term used to describe a pregnant person 35 years of age or older. While geriatric pregnancies are considered high-risk pregnancies, the majority result in healthy babies. Notice what they did. They start off telling, oh, it's an outdated term. But you listen to these people, and you tell it, oh, wait until your 30s or 40s to get, and let me show you what it does to you. Complications associated with advanced maternal age include the higher rates of pregnancy loss, genetic abnormalities, stillbirth, gestational diabetes, preeclampsia, high rates of, I can't even say that word, C-section, preterm birth, placental abruption. So you have a whole bunch of issues that arise. And remember, I even gave you autism to apply to that as well. And then we look at another thing where they sit here and lie to you and tell you the positives and negatives that apply to parenting. single motherhood, single. It's a single parenting. Let's be real, it's mostly single motherhood parenting. They give you the 7 positives, 7 negatives. So we're going to skip these 7 negatives because we already know there's a lot of negatives. Let's go to our positives. It says the relationship strengthens. And I think what I find funny about this is that they want to say it's for parenting. And let's be realistic. Majority of the single parenting is from the mom's standpoint, not from the father's. So if we're going to take it from that standpoint, a lot of these are illogical and lying, because if we were to let's start off with the first one, relationship strengthens. The individual bond between the child and the parent strengthens when the child tends to spend more time with them separately. Single parent becomes the sole person to fulfill all kinds of needs in the child. The parent realizes the weight of this role. The child will grow up to be a responsible and considerate individual who isn't judgmental. Notice what she added in there. It isn't judgmental. And what's funny about this last sentence, the role of the child will grow up to be a responsible and considerate individual. And what we look at the statistically wise. Matter of fact, I didn't bring up another statistic. Let's look at it. Facts about single mothers. 63% of teen suicides are from single mother households. 70% of juveniles in state institution. 71% of high school dropouts. 75% of children in chemical abuse centers. 80% of rapists. 85% of youth in prison. And 90% of homeless and runaway children. So they're not responsible and they're not considerate. Because if that were the case, they wouldn't be the majority of the so-called delinquents in today's society. And especially the judgmental part, which I'm not even going to get into that. That'll probably be in another topic for another day. The sense of responsibility, healthy home atmosphere, which I just proved that to be false. We're talking about abuse. But we're going to skip that. Learning to face difficulties early on, which we can actually, you know what? I'll give her that. They do learn to face difficulties early on, which we just discussed. Learning to prioritize better. Actually, it would be the exact opposite. Learning to prioritize worse, because now the priorities that should have been involved with dealing with the mentality of discipline and your actions have consequences have not been instilled in that child, because he or she's thinking from an emotional standpoint instead of a rational, logical reasoning standpoint. Which I'm not saying all children should just be all rational, all reason, all logic. I'm saying that the balance is important. The mother, you as a mother, are there for nurturing and caring for the child. The father is there for the discipline aspect, so that the child understands that every action has a consequence. The sense of maturity, which I'll go into another statistic for that point, is the sense of maturity. It won't even say the sense. It's a biological point of maturity for a young woman. When a young woman does not have a father in her life, she actually has to mature earlier. This is a biological fact as well, because if she does not have that biological father in her life, it is more likely for that young woman to mature earlier physically. Because if we look at this from a evolutionary standpoint, when wars were going on and another, let's say tribe-wise, if a tribe destroyed another tribe, that the tribe that won would take the women and children and bring them back, and in this case, more likely to kill the male children and bring back basically the women and the young girls. And in the case of survival instinct-wise, your body, the body of the young girls would have to develop faster fertility-wise. So, like I said, take your morals, ethics, and I'm just taking this from a logical, reasonable point of view. So, even in today's day and age, if you look it up, a young girl will more likely mature faster because of her not having her father or a male role model in her life, I don't remember the current ages, so I can't give that to you. so I'm not going to give you the age and be lying to you. And then it says extended family. But you get the gist of what I'm talking about. So, do you really care about your children if you're going to put them through all this and put them in the deficit that they can more likely not get themselves out of until they get mental, basically psychological help to help them understand what's going on, because they've already started off on a bad foot. You put your child at risk of being highly, just can't even get out of the gutter. I need you to stop and think about somebody else except for yourself for once. Tomorrow is not promised to you. Start being you, the better you, today.